Oh, Moscow. Do you really have to go? Madam Toastmaster, fellow members and most welcome guests, this is how my trip to Moscow began last April with a bad attempt at a joke from a British Airways check-in agent when he was looking at my visa. For the first time in my life, I was traveling with a visa stamped on my passport to Moscow, Russia. Russia, the largest country on earth, a land of endless forests stretching as far the eye can see in the taiga, of centuries of inspirational histories, of cosmonauts flying among the heaven, and of great armies defeating the Germans in World War II. I was so looking forward to this trip. A few days in Moscow. I met my travel companion, Galok Chung, at Heathrow Airport. Because we were traveling together. We'd been invited to deliver a workshop at a Toastmaster conference. We were planning to do a bit of tourism along the way as well. The 4-hour flight went in like a breeze. I was packed like a sardine right at the back of the airplane, but I didn't care. Soon I would be landing in Moscow. And a couple of years of trying to learn Russian on and off would be surely put to the test upon landing. And they were. Здравствуйте. This is what the surly Russian woman at the counter, at the border counter said while I presented my passport. English, please. We start with English. Where do you fly from? London. What's your nationality? French. Here you go. Passport was stamped. I was in without a problem. Galok had to wait a little bit longer. I don't know why. It seemed that Russians don't really like British passports after all. The ride on the Aero Express train to central Moscow was an occasion to start taking the ambience and mingling with the locals a little bit. I noticed immediately the train is really wide. There are 3 seats on that side and 2 white seats on the other side. And immediately I'm like, ha! This is because Russian train tracks are wider. I'm such a geek, and I know it. Sitting next to me was an old Russian babushka, a quintessential Russian babushka, old and withered, looking at a picture of her grandson deeply and gently stroking it. Maybe he was off to go up to Siberia in the military, who knows. But I didn't mess with her because there is one saying, never ever mess up with a Russian babushka. So I left her on her own. As we slowly went our way, a lady went down the aisle saying, "Mороженое, пирожное, напитки, ice cream, drinks, pastries," and immediately, I understand the word, I can speak some Russian, but I did not order anything. We arrived in Belaruski Vokzal, the train station where the train led us to, and immediately I do what I always do in train station. I just started to have a look at the departure board, taking in the ambience of the vast country I was now in. Smolensk, St. Petersburg, Novosibirsk. Wait, Novosibirsk is in Siberia. I could hop on a train straight to Siberia tonight if I wanted to. But no, we had an Airbnb to check in, a place to go to, somewhere called Oktyabrskaya, named after the October Revolution, and we went on the Moscow metro. Galok's first impression of it was, oh, there's a huge queue to go down the escalators. It's just like TFL. But I was kind of perhaps taking the ambience in a bit more myself. I looked at the tall ceilings of the vestibule, the big M red letters. There were even hammers and sickle signs on the floor dating back from the Soviet era. It was just as I had read, opulence, an opulent public transport system. There were even some surly guards and metal detectors and extra machine just to get onto the escalators. But we were not on the side. We obviously looked reasonable enough. Went down the escalator and arrived on the platform. And it was just as I had read. 2 chandeliers projecting light onto the ceilings, marble benches on the side, and sculptures of Belarusia and the Belarusian partisans on the wall. It was just as I had read it. and super efficient too, with trains whizzing past every 75 seconds. We arrived in the Airbnb, and it was time to check in and discover that in Russia they do things very differently. So far so good. The code at the entrance worked, so it wasn't some kind of scam. And then the instructions say, you should get the key from the letterbox and you will get into the flat. Looks simple. It was a ground floor flat, and surely the letterbox must have been nearby. We looked around, it wasn't next to the door. We looked around the vestibule area, the letterbox was nowhere to be found. We even opened an electrical cabinet, thinking that the letterbox may have been inside. No. Galok went outside and couldn't find it either. But I had a stroke of imagination. I went to the first floor and found the letterbox for our ground floor flat on the first floor. It's Russia, they do things differently over there. The key worked, but it just wouldn't move. Panic started to happen. Was it some kind of scam? Were we scammed? Would we be able to get into the flat? I decided it's time to call the owner. Привет, Anton, it's Florian from Airbnb. We're just checking into the flat, but we cannot get in. Can you help us? Can you speak more slowly, please? Anton, we cannot get into the flat. We're trying to... And on that note, the door magically opened. What went wrong? Well, it turns out in London, to get into my flat, I have to unlock the door clockwise. In Moscow, it was the other way around. It's maybe because they drive on the other side of the road over there, after all. Galok had some plan that night, and invited me. I'm meeting a friend from work that's now moved in Moscow. He's got a glamorous girlfriend. We're going to go to a nice restaurant. Would you want to join us? It's going to be next to the Red Square. Enjoy your evening, Galoks. I've got my own plans. I had my own plans that night. I had to be there for 7:30 on Nowy Arbat Street for a Toastmaster meeting. I got on the metro again, this time just on my own, and I fell in love with this machine. But I was in a rush, and I started running up the escalators when I arrived at Smolenskaya. And in London you can do it, not in Moscow. 70 meters deep, baby. Try running up 70 meters worth of escalators. I was panting, but I arrived at the meeting, and I immediately made eye contact with a beautiful lady with long chestnut hair, and other people looked at me as well and recognized me. The guest from London had arrived. It was table topics time in the meeting, and I put my hand up. I volunteered to do a table topic in a Russian-speaking Toastmasters club. The theme was easy, work and corporate. I can do that. And I wasn't in the little piece of paper with my table topic question on. I couldn't read it. Because it was written in lowercase Cyrillic. The big Cyrillic, I can read it all right. It's printed. But handwritten one, it's beyond my comprehension. It might just have been some Chinese character. So I did the thing you always do. I just went completely off topic. Меня зовут Florian. My name is Florian. I come from London. It's первый раз в России и первый раз в Москве. It's my first time in Russia and my first time in Moscow. I like it so far. I think your metro system is way better than London. The Moscow metro was already saving me a couple of times that day already. I'm here for the conference, and I like Toastmaster because it's a safe space. Как сказать по-русски safe space? And people gave me words, and I managed to speak for 2 minutes in Russian, saying something that kind of made sense in some respect, which is I'm fairly proud of. The video is available online, by the way. It was the end of the meeting, and just before we were about to leave, I realized I had made a major cultural faux pas. Everybody was going downstairs to get their coats and jackets. Mine had still been on throughout. Would my colleagues think that, Florian is некультурный, which can of roughly be translated as not cultured, or boorish, if you're that way inclined, because I had kept my coat on. And in Russia, you should always put your coat off and leave it in the wardrobe. But they didn't think of it. They obviously said, he's a foreigner, we're going to tolerate his idiosyncrasy. And it was dinner time. A friend had told me, there's a good buffet place you can go to. It's quintessentially Russian. It's called Moo Moo. Why? Because there are going to be black and white cows outside the restaurants. Cows outside the restaurant? Is this the countryside or what? It's supposed to be Moscow. But lo and behold, there was a Moo Moo not far away from the Airbnb. And I considered going in. And I looked at what was on the other side of the road. I'm like, both options are tempting. And I was increasingly drawn to the other side of the road, to a very familiar sign. And I ended up washing my first Russian dinner with a glass of apple juice in McDonald's. Got a bad habit, guy. But I more than made up for it the next day. I went wandering the city on my own. I saw the Red Square and the Kremlin for the first time, the tall red tower standing by the Moscow River. I was in awe of the architectures, the beautiful statues, the ornate buildings. There were even still a few busts of Lenin along the way, which kept for historical reasons, no doubt. And I decided to get some lunch not far away from the Kremlin and to try some quintessential Russian food. A soup, borscht. I ordered it in Russian, I managed to do so. And it arrived 10 minutes later on the table. On a wooden plate, I had a bowl of steaming red soup. It looked yummy. Some black bread, some sour cream, some fresh onions, and even some meat. All separately. How am I supposed to eat these things? It just didn't make sense. Was I supposed to eat them separately, mix it all together? So I texted a Russian friend who answered a little bit too late. You should put the sour cream inside the soup, you should eat everything with the bread, put the onion and the meat inside. Well, I started spreading the sour cream on my bread, which is not the way to go at all. The second day was quite interesting. I decided to get some more borscht again. But this time in a different place, Ulica Arbat, the Bohemian quarter of Moscow, where you've got artists, fairs and crafts, and I had to buy some souvenirs over there as well. I loved it and I decided to try fast food again this time, but not McDonald's, not again. The Russian equivalent instead, Tieremyok, where they sell traditional Russian food as fast food prices. I went there. Здравствуйте, я хочу борщ и кашу, пожалуйста. Кашу. Кашу с фруктом и яблоком. Кашу с маслом, пожалуйста. Масло. Nobody in this place spoke any English at all. I wanted to get some kasha with butter. It seemed logical. I mean, kasha is like a rice, a buckwheat. It should not be with fruit. It should be with butter instead. But I relented and I said, I'll have it with apples instead. The borscht arrived. It was not as delicious as the day before, but still pretty nice. And eventually, the kasha arrived, and it was not what I expected. I was thinking I would something looking like rice, some brown or black rice that I could have spread my fruit on and eat it. No. I got a small bowl of liquid that looked quite thick and gooey. There were specks of unidentifiable substances on it, and something translucent had been placed on the top of it. It kind of almost looked like some kind of jelly. What was it? This looked like wallpaper paste and not exactly edible food. But I had a try. It's warm, sweet, and fruity. I quite like it. And eventually I finished it. I was on a mission in the Arbat streets though. I wanted to buy a souvenir, one that I'd wanted to for years. Initially I found one for 8,000 ruble, £100, too expensive. But I found one for 3,000 ruble, about 35 pounds, a lot better. And it was lovely. And I asked the girl at the shop, is it real? Da, it's real. You can see inside. Ruski Lushenyek. Yes, it was real. And I started stroking it and fell in love with it. A lovely ushanka, a Russian fur hat that you wear in the winter to keep yourself warm. And the girls in the shop started speaking with me, saying, where do you come from? Oh, I come from London. I'm here for Moscow for a conference. Is this your first time in Russia? Da, первый раз в России. I quite like Moscow. I think the Moscow metro is very efficient. The city is very beautiful. And one of the girls asked the question, do you think Russian women are beautiful? To which I sheepishly answered, da, yes. Later that evening, we had a tour of the city for the VIP guests attending the conference. Our guides were Mikhail and Yekaterina, two folk singers that had an expert knowledge of the old city. They showed us an Orthodox church. We even went inside to see an amazing service where incense was rising through the roof. It was amazing. And then we did the same in another church, and another church. Oh, this is the German church that the German built in the 18th century. We should go and visit it. Oh, and this is an house that belonged to so-and-so. And meanwhile, the temperature was dropping. It started to feel quite cold outside. It was late. Everybody was angry. Yekaterina made fun of us. Oh, all these men, they're looking like that because they're so tired. But she powered on and wanted to show yet another church. I took the fur out of my bag and put it on my head. It was really, really the right weather for it. And eventually we arrived at the restaurant nevertheless, after this never-ending tour of the old city of Moscow made in freezing cold. We had some great fun, me and Galak, at the Toastmaster conference. We delivered some workshops and made friends with the Russian Toastmaster community. I was even interviewed by the long chestnut-haired lady that I locked eyes with on the first day. I said to her, I like Moscow. I think Moskvichki are very nice people. Ah, Moskvichki. So, what do you think of Russian women? What could I say? I started blushing like a tomato. I had my deers in the headlight. But I looked at her and said,